I don't believe it. I've got a puncture. Oh, you know what? It's absolutely inevitable with mountain biking, isn't it? Even if you've got tubeless tyres and sealant, sometimes those holes aren't going to fix themselves. So we've got tyre plugs and we've got tyre boots with inner tubes that can sort this mess out. And I'm going to show you exactly how. So stick with me. And don't forget to like this video if you want to see more helpful tips in the future, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. So as you can see, I've got a puncture, and I've actually given myself a bit of a snake bite, which is effectively just a pinch puncture where the rim has hit two sides of the tyre at once. Now, usually with tubeless, a puncture will fix itself. So if you have sealant in there, then it will fill the hole. But sometimes the holes are too big for the sealant to fill and cope with, and so you'll need a little extra help with a tyre plug. Just a little added tip, as you can see, my sealant is blue, so it's really easy to find the holes around the tyre. If you know you've got a puncture and you can't see the hole, perhaps you haven't got any sealant in there and it's not coming through and you can't find it, then an easy hack is to try and put some air into the tyre and then bring your face over the tyre, bring your cheek and your ear in line with the tyre, and just rotate it around, preferably with your bike upside down so you can move it quite easily, and you should be able to feel it on your cheek and hear it in your ear. And I've just found that as a nice easy way to find those really small holes. But I'm happy I found my hole, I found the culprit, and this needs a little bit of help with an extra tyre plug. A great thing about this sort of puncture is I don't even need to take the wheel out of the bike, so let's get going. Now, your tyre plugs should be very sticky and malleable, and that's a good thing because it's going to stay in there in place, but it does make it tricky sometimes. Now, my tip is to go for the centre of the plug and get it fixed into your prong so you've got an even amount either side. So my multi-tool has a full tyre plug kit on it here. So you've got the prong, slightly different shape to the PT's one, but it still works the same. And then you've got the knife so you can cut it off afterwards. And with all of these tyre plug tools, you'll see that sometimes you have a circular file, and this is just in case your tyre plugs are too big to get into the hole, then you might want to have to stab it and file it out a little bit just to get it big enough to get the tyre plug in. So I generally use the plug to feel around for that hole so I can see it there. It's bubbling more if I open it. So I know that's where my hole is. So I line it up, and the idea is to push the whole thing through until it folds in half and has a little bit tasseled out the top. Now, if you don't have a knife to cut this off, you're going to need to push it in just a little bit more until there's only a few millimeters sticking out the top. And then we need to take the prong out, and sometimes I try and open this up and do it real quick so that it stays in and doesn't pull it back out. So there's a little bit of finessing to do here if you don't have a knife, and that is to just try and poke it in as best you can so that there's not much sticking out of the top. Or you can bend them to the side and try and dry out the area and try and get these to stick in. Again, this is going to be a bit of a fiddle. You'll see it's much easier with a knife. So let me show you that now. So with your knife, you need to be careful, but obviously you want to hold the end so it's nice and taut, and then just slice away at it a couple of mil, maybe 2 or 3 mil above the tyre itself. And the idea is just so there's no flappy bits that can get caught on the trail. So once you're happy with the length that's sticking out of the tyre and you think it's sealed, it's a good idea to use that cheek and ear test again, just to listen and see if you can feel any more air coming out, because there has been occasions when I've had to use 2 tyre plugs in one hole to seal it. And then you just want to get that tyre plug or the tyre and roll it all the way to the bottom. And assuming you've still got sealant in there, it should all congeal around the plug and try and fill in any imperfections. And then you just want to go and give it a good go on the trail. Okay, this time I've split my sidewall. There is a big old tear down the side of the tyre, and the problem with that is that no tyre plug is going to be able to seal that because of its shape. So it's time to take the wheel off and use an inner tube. However, if you were to put an inner tube in here, then it could just pop out the sides, pinch itself, and then go down later. So what we're going to do is use a tyre boot. If there's any residual air in there, which I've got, I'm just going to release all of that just to make it easier to take the tyre off, get out as much as possible, if not all of it. Now the tyre is nice and loose, we just want to take one side off. We don't need to take the whole thing off. And my top tip is to move that bead right into the center of the rim if you can, because once the whole bead is in the center, it'll have more of a gap in order to leverage that tyre out. Now that that's all into the center, you should have a decent amount of gap that you can pull on the tyre, or you can use a lever like this, get it in the gap, push it down, and then pull it all the way around, like so. Now you can leave the sealant in there, it's not going to be a problem as such, but what I do like to do is feel around the tyre and get any bits out of there that might puncture your new inner tube. There might be thorns in your tyre that you didn't know were there, so just try and remove as much rubbish as possible and get it ready for an inner tube. Now this is kind of why I always come prepared with a packet of wet wipes for this sort of scenario. You can also carry some gloves with you instead. So you can get purpose-built tyre boots that often come in a puncture repair kit like this, but if you don't have one of those, then you can use some old rubbish usually, as long as it's quite sturdy and plasticky. You don't want it to be absorbent, it doesn't want to be paper, otherwise the sealant will just turn it into a smush. So something quite robust like this, or for this reason, I almost always have gaffer tape around my pump just in case I ever need it. And this you can fold into itself and make a tyre boot. Now most tyre boots are sticky, which are absolutely fine if you don't have sealant in there, but if your tyre is all moist with sealant, it's not going to stick, and that's why I like to fold the gaffer tape rather than stick it to the inside of the tyre. And all we need to do is place this between our split and our tyre tube. My next big tip is to put a bit of air in your tube before you put it into the tyre, because that way it'll hold its form and it'll be less likely to pinch and puncture itself. So you'll need to remove your tubeless valve because you won't need that anymore, and your inner tube will be going through that hole instead. So now I'm in a position to put the tube in. I just want to locate my slit, so that's there. I can almost put my finger through it. And basically you want to put your tube in as normal. So I like to get the valve in first so that it's kind of where it needs to be. And then this is why we need a bit of air in it. So we can get our tyre boot and place it between the slit and the new inner tube. And then my personal preference is to try and put the bead where the slit is in first, as it's more likely to hold the tyre boot in place. And then you're just going to try and run the bead all the way around the tyre. So at this stage you want to get the bead right to the center of the rim, because again that gives you more leverage when it comes to the final bit. And also you might find that your inner tube will move around, and that's why we have air in it, so that we can place it onto the rim, maybe stretch it a little bit, or you can just feed the inner tube in bit by bit and then feed the bead of the tyre into the rim bit by bit. And doing this by hand just means that you can feel and make sure you're not pinching that new inner tube. Now I'm in the final stages, so I'm just going to make sure that that bead is all the way into the center to give me more leverage up at the top. And if you can do it by hand, that's best, because you can do it nice and slowly and you're less likely to puncture your new inner tube. However, if you must use a lever, then what you want to do is get it under the tyre like this, find it hooking on the rim, you should feel it, and then give it a little pull up, just lever it up and then keep going a little bit so it pushes back past the rim. And there we go, it's all on board. And then it's time to put air in. So once it's up, you're good to go. But just remember that you are running a tube. They might feel a bit different and it might be easier to puncture further down the line. So just go easy until you get home and you can sort it out properly. Well, there we have it, and that's why I smugly always carry a bit of gaffer tape on my pump, just in case I need a tyre boot. Anyway, are there any tricks that you always do? Is there something you always take? I know I've even fixed a split in a tyre wall with a bit of a Velcro strap before, just in emergencies, but there's got to be more out there. So let me know down in the comments below and help out that GMBN tech community.